Welcome to the Talking Advisory and Client Solutions podcast. My name is Leah Crowley, and in this series we're taking a look at a range of topics that you might know a little bit about but want to get a better understanding of. We will discuss a range of topics like buying and selling a business, valuations, due diligence, debt advisory, sustainability, financial transformation, and a whole lot more. Today we're going to sit down and have a chat with Warrick Oakes. He's in the Advisory and Divisions Department, specialising in mergers and acquisitions. Have I got that right, Warrick?
That's right. I also do work in transaction advisory.
Yeah, nice. You do a lot of stuff.
Thank you.
How long have you been at HLB, Manjard?
A little over 5 years now.
Yeah, nice. Did you start in this sort of role, or have you sort of moved?
No, I've been in the profession about 15 years or 16 years, starting in audit. So a lot of people do stints in audit, those sort of core competencies, and then roll that into the advisory piece.
Yeah, nice. Well, in this episode, we'll be talking about, buying a business and maybe some helpful strategies that you can kind of start off with when you start considering it. So, who might consider buying a business, particularly now?
Sure. Well, there's typically around 4 or 5 different types of acquirers generally. I'll lump them into about 4 categories here. So the first one will be a strategic acquirer. That's someone normally in a business who's looking to buy another business, basically, simplistically.
Yep.
There's a financial investor, so it's someone who's looking more for a passive sort of investment. They'll, pop in some of their own money and just watch it grow. There's personal investors who often come in, have a little bit of cash behind them, and actually adopt a CEO type role and watch the business grow from strength to strength. And then often there's just a management buyout. So typically, through Australia, a lot of people getting old. Those people looking to retire, and management buyout might be a real option for those businesses.
So with the management buyout, how does that work?
So typically there'll be an open conversation between the managers going up to the owner and saying, look, Frank, you're getting a little bit old. Would you be willing to sell the business? So obviously that can be a strategy. It creates a liquidity event for the owner, which is obviously one of the biggest things about being able to retire, is actually turning that business into money. So what would happen with those instances that often come across to us, we'd look to help and create a valuation for them, and then hopefully the managers are able to afford it. This typically, it is multiple millions of dollars, so finding finance can be a little bit difficult, but often, people do have good contacts, and a few discussions with the banks and so on can get that finance for them.
And that kind of buyout sounds more long-term than potentially some of the others.
Yeah, naturally these things take time to evolve. Everyone needs to focus on making sure the business continues as well, but they do typically last years rather than multiple months, which a normal transaction might do.
Yeah. What are some of the advantages in acquiring a business? That kind of makes sense with the management one. You're there, you're invested, like you know the business through and through, and you want to see it continue, and you want to be the person whose vision sees it continue. What are some of the advantages in acquiring a business?
Typically when a business looks to buy another business, they've sort of reached their sort of saturation point of organic growth. Typically people will look at how much revenue they'll be able to bring in the next couple of years. And one of the easiest ways to do that is actually just buy that. So you buy the revenue, buy the profits, etc. You're able to also acquire, obviously, new customers, maybe different skill set, and most importantly in this labour market, new employees.
Yeah, right. And would your business and the one that you're buying, should they be similar, or could they be super different?
We've seen where they are super different.
Yeah.
No two businesses is the same, obviously, but it's often a little bit of an easier fit if you kind of know the people that you've had some dealings with historically, or it's in a market you really want to get into, and then you can overlay your skills and your skill set to watch the business flourish that way. Yeah,
I guess in that respect, let's say you own a bakery, and you think, well, I could probably also own a flour mill or whatever they're called. That kind of thing where it's an offshoot. You're not necessarily going into scuba diving as well.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah. Let's pretend that I own a microphone company.
Okay.
And I work a lot with another company that rents out microphone stands. And I think, well, I could buy that company, acquire that company, and then I would be not only selling but renting and hiring as well. Is that the kind of offshoot business that people are looking at acquiring?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, strategically, if you look to acquire a business, you're ultimately growing your own value. If your long-term game is obviously to do that and then sell the business at a later time, it's a great strategy. You're not only opening a new market, but you're actually in something you kind of already know. So, it's not too alien. So it actually makes a lot of sense to do something like that.
Yeah, so I don't have to buy more microphone companies.
No, not necessarily. And you don't really want to put all your eggs in one basket. It is important to diversify, there's no doubt about it, but be aware of the risks and so on of, taking on a new management team, etc., from a new company.
Yeah, nice. So how do you go about finding a business to buy? I mean, you mentioned just before that often you'll already know of the business and you've worked with that business in some sort of form and capacity. Is that kind of the most common way to know about them?
Typically, you would know them already. So you've obviously worked in the same industry. You know the owners, if they're getting to a certain age or you see that their business is stagnating, you might, have some just brief discussions at the pub or catch them at a conference or something where you open the door to potentially looking at opportunities together. We, as a professional advisory practice, would often just act as a sounding board. So we would, so if someone came to us and asked us to have a look confidentially at the business, that's one of the benefits of us coming on board and helping through. But what we can also do is just go out to market and just see if the deal or the opportunity that it presents itself is actually one where 1 + 1 = 3.
So you say out to market, does that make it more public?
Typically, we operate quite confidentially, which is obviously one of the benefits of using a professional advisor. You don't actually have to make the calls yourself because that could just be taken as being cheeky or whatever it might be. Yeah. So an approach by a professional advisor is done in confidence and often gets us a little bit further along in the process without causing too many issues.
Yeah, I guess because you're not there for any reason other than to just find out the actual facts so that things can move or not move on. I mean, how often are your services called upon and then nothing comes of it?
Typically so we obviously are traditionally a family business firm. So we hope to have very long-term relationships with our clients. Some of those calls naturally just end up doing nothing, but obviously they are long-term plays. All of these acquisitions are a big thing. They are life-changing events. A seller may say no to you today, but literally in 6 months' time, they realize they don't want to do the work anymore because there's an offer on the table for them. So things do change. They change every day, but they do take a long time.
Have you noticed, particularly with the past couple of years and the transitions and changes that just everybody and everything is going through at the moment, have you noticed more of these queries and potentially people thinking about either selling or acquiring businesses are happening now? Yeah,
absolutely. So obviously at the start of COVID, I think everyone thought that the economy was going to really struggle.
Yeah.
There's certain industries which that has happened, there's no doubt. We're looking at construction at the moment. It seems to be falling over a tad, but that's a different podcast. Where we do find, though, businesses which have really, really done well, obviously now more valuable than they ever have been, but to get to that point, the owners have done far more work than they ever had to in such a short period of time and are actually burnt out. So there's great opportunity. If you are hungry to make an acquisition in this market, you just need to find the right target. I did reach out to someone and actually they have a number of contacts throughout a number of industries, and their best analogy was like, if you want to make an acquisition, you really need to be a hunter in this market.
Yeah, it's almost like you need to have contacts. You need to have at least some sort of network so that you can call upon people, even just to have a coffee or whatnot with, so that just even in conversation they can say, oh yeah, well so-and-so's really, they are burnt out. They're thinking maybe they don't want to
No, exactly.
continue.
And traditionally, you could look at people who are getting a little bit older, that, in this size of entities we're looking at here, it's often parents handing down the reins to their children not necessarily getting as invested, the business may be going a little bit down. And, you'll pick those things up through the market. Your customers might say, become new customers because they've had a bad experience with that person. So, it's a pretty small space. People do definitely talk, and it is very, very important that you know the right people and you make those calls, hopefully at the most opportune time.
Yeah. Oh, timing, right?
Timing.
Yeah. What are some of the potential risks about acquiring a business, and can these risks be mitigated? And I suspect this is where you guys come in, and it's super important to have someone like you.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I've mentioned, these are big transactions. There's a whole heap of reasons why deals fall over. There's costs associated with it all, including, ultimately how you're going to finance the thing.
Yeah.
The best way that a professional service firm can help is obviously make sure that the deal makes sense, make sure you're getting good value, how you extract that value, and then most importantly, just making sure that once the acquisition has occurred, there's a plan in place to make sure that over the next 90 days or 120 days or 6 months or whatever it is, everything goes to plan. Ultimately, what happens is when you purchase a business, you often take on the owner and their staff. So there's a really important transition piece, normally lasts between 1 to 2 years, where everyone really needs to focus on the business growing, continuing to be successful, and everyone staying happy.
And that's the thing, right? Because I would imagine with the employees of the business that has been acquired, the change, there'd be a lot of anxiety as well. So it's not just talking about, making sure you have enough money to make this acquisition, but making sure that everybody that is working in that business who have worked to help it succeed stay there.
Totally. I mean, change is hard for everyone. There's no doubt about it. We do, and it'll come up in a later podcast in relation to how transitions and change work through these sort of things. But it is, front of mind. You really need to make sure that everyone's on board and working towards the same thing, because even once an acquisition occurs, as I've mentioned, the owner typically sticks around. So there's another change piece coming in 12 months or 2 years' time. So, be aware of it at all times. Make sure you're able to impart your flavour or whatever it might be on the new entity, but at the same time realise that people are going through an incredible stressful time. And, as I've mentioned, change doesn't really sit well for most people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would think that you would need probably a 3 to 5 year plan, because once the owner leaves after 1 or 2 years, well, then you still need to have a plan.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Moving forward.
So obviously most acquisitions occur because there is a big play in place. A lot of people in Australia love talking about private equity and, get into a position where you'll be of interest to a private equity player. So that typically takes multiple years to get to. We're talking about hitting revenue figures of $50 million, etc. So becoming quite large businesses, and that obviously just takes time.
Yeah, I would think so. So what are some of the key steps to a successful business acquisition?
So most importantly, just understand why you're doing this. So if it's because you want to make them double your revenue, make sure that's the aim and you're getting it for a decent price.
Yeah.
Make sure you understand the industry, the target, the customers of the target, etc., etc. Now, we often encourage modelling of these exercises, with scenario analysis in terms of what might happen if something goes wrong, can you still afford it, etc., etc. And then also look to get some advisors involved. So critical to have a good M&A lawyer, good M&A team from an accounting perspective to make sure that, due diligence is done to a very good level. You need to make sure the quality of earnings are there and make sure you're not overpaying.
Yeah, we'll talk about this in a later episode, but you've got to make sure that it's fair for everyone.
Absolutely. I mean, balance is exactly what you need to do in here. As I've mentioned, critically, you need to take on the owner for the next 1 year or 2 years. If you try and screw him over early in a deal, he's not going to be the most motivated employee.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. How should an organisation or someone looking to acquire a business start this process?
Well, as I say, it's a part of a big strategy piece. So have a plan in place, where you're trying to get to, why you want to do that, and then gather some evidence or knowledge. So that will be phone calls with your customers, ask them if they've got potentially any leads or have heard anything along the grapevine. Talk to your competitors. When people work together, often information is shared and all the rest of it. You can use it to your advantage, and also get advice from your accountants and your any business advisors you may have. We're really here for your journey. We'd really like to get involved nice and early and just make sure that, everything that we do is of benefits you and us.
And should you be talking to multiple businesses all at once, or does word get out that you're asking too many? You're inquiring into too many businesses. Like, is there a bit of an etiquette in this kind of thing as well?
There certainly can be, and obviously, when we represent people on the sell side, privacy is critical.
Yeah.
No one likes being marketed that they're on sale or anything along those lines. So certainly there's a little bit of restraint required, and you don't really want to be known as too aggressive or anything along those lines. So if you do get to a position where you are very serious about something, as we've said before, come talk to us. More than happy to reach out on a no-names basis, see if there is appetite, and hopefully we can structure a deal for you.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, this has been very informative, and I've still got quite a few questions, but they're a little bit different, so we'll save that for the next episode. But Warrick, thank you so much for coming on and giving us all this info.
Thank you very much for having me.
Warrick Oakes' expertise and knowledge is part of HLB Manjudd's advisory and client solution services. For further information, please visit our website hlb.com.au.